Hello everyone and welcome to WW What Was This Week in WWE for the week of June 20th to the 25th, where I'm going to take a look back at the three big shows and give you three big things. We start with Monday Night Raw and what was my favorite part of Money in the Bank but was kind of my least favorite part of Raw, with AJ and Cena looking like they're going to be continuing their rivalry to Battleground. Now, while I did like what the club did in this, AJ having Gallows and Anderson come out and quote-unquote apologize. I know a lot of people thought this made the club look toothless or a little weak. I personally felt a very strong Bullet Club-esque vibe, like this is them being the kind of smarky, sophomoric pranksters, kind of like the hybrid of NWO and DX that Bullet Club was in Japan. If you replace Cena with Okada, I think it makes a lot of sense. Bigger problem I had with this was John Cena coming out and kind of doing the same old act. I also have a question for Mr. Cena. What is your obsession with male testicles? Everyone either has their word or their balls. And last night, son, you proved you had neither. Also, I think it's particularly funny that a guy who's going to come out and act all street and thug also spoke fluent Mandarin Chinese to appease his corporate overlord. Little bit of a weird disconnect. Really was unhappy with the match that Cena and Carl Anderson had. I want to see more of Carl Anderson. When I seen him in New Japan, guy is phenomenal. But he was completely buried by Cena. The worst part of this, and I'll get into this more, was the commentary. They're really trying to sell AJ as a heel, but more of your crowd is cheering for the heel and for Cena. I don't know, it's all kind of falling flat. It's feeling like a retread, and that's really what an AJ Cena feud shouldn't be. But anyway, moving on, the second big thing we have for your night on Raw was returns. We had a lot of good returns. We had the return of my personal favorites, the Wyatts. Oh, Bray Wyatt, it is so good to have you back. Putting the Wyatts versus the New Day, great. Xavier Woods actually looking scared or mesmerized by Bray Wyatt, brilliant. Wyatt's promo, made me so happy. Then, the other big return of the night, and the biggest ovation of the night, was the return of Sasha Banks. Yay! She's looking like it's going to be her and Charlotte at Battleground. I think they've confused Battleground with SummerSlam. This is seeming like a lot of build that should be going to SummerSlam, but we'll get to that in the main event. Which, of course, our main event and the third thing we have from Raw is the Shield Triple Threat. All three members of the Shield will be fighting for the title at Battleground. The build makes sense. It made sense coming from Money in the Bank. It doesn't make sense for it to be happening at Battleground. Or, it may not be happening at all, but we'll get to that in our special section of this week. Then we move on to, let's be honest, everyone's favorite show of the week, NXT. NXT this week gave us a just masterful heel turn by Austin Aries. He came out with No Way Jose, and for a minute, he had me going. I'm like, oh, I thought Aries was, dance a little bit and then hit the discus elbow. But he started dancing, and that was strange to see Austin Aries dancing, I will admit. But it came to the end, they're dancing on the table, and then, BAM! Hits the elbow on Jose, lays him out, brings him to the ramp, beats into him, lays into him. He's walking up the ramp, and this is where the absolute brilliance of Austin Aries comes in. You have a good chunk of the crowd who's chanting, Austin Aries, and rather than, stick his arm up and be like, yes, aren't you glad with what I did? Because he wants that good, just tasty heel heat, he runs back down, locks Jose in the last chancery, and you just actually hear screaming, cheer me now! Chant my name now! And he also may or not have said a four-letter word, but we'll let that pass. All in all, great work by Austin Aries. Really liked it. And, keeping with the theme from Raw returns, we had the return of Bayley! Yay! Really hoping she's on her way to the main roster and it's just a pit stop in NXT. I wouldn't mind another Asuka Bayley match, but all in all, really good to have Bayley back. You can just feel the energy pick up, and I think she's pure concentrated happy. And finally, the big news of the night, we got the announcement that it'll be Nakamura and Balor in 3 weeks. Now, I thought they were going to be saving this for a takeover, but it looks like they're going to be doing it just at a regular NXT. Bit of a surprise. I do think that this will be the build for Nakamura versus Joe, which I think is the plan for Brooklyn. Because Brooklyn's kind of de facto turned into NXT's big show. Most in part to last year's NXT TakeOver Brooklyn being fantastic. But all in all, great news. I'm so excited to see Finn Balor and Nakamura. Last but not least by any means this week, we had Smackdown. Now, the big surprise of Smackdown was in the opening, we had a new commentator on board, and with someone in some legal troubles that we'll get to in the special section, David Otunga joined Mauro Ranallo and Byron Saxton for commentary this week. And I have to be honest, I really like David Otunga. He was actually seemed genuinely enthused about what he was watching. They toned down on this weird thing where they have the commentators kind of bash Byron Saxton. I think someone in the production booth who's feeding into these guys has a hate boner for Saxton, or he just thinks it's really funny when people make fun of him. They toned down on that, seemed genuinely excited, and plus Mauro Ranallo was just butter in your ears. But all in all, it was actually a pleasant to listen to the commentary on SmackDown, which has been a drastic change from whatever Jerry Lawler was doing. Like I mentioned with the Monday Night Raw stuff, we had another AJ and Cena kind of thing, with the Usos playing the baby, and really kind of started to fall flat the way the commentators are trying to present AJ and the club. As, oh, they're just these sneaky heels, oh, it's like, oh, AJ's gone back on all his conviction. It doesn't feel like you're being legitimate. It feels forced. Mostly because your crowd is chanting for them to beat these guys up. I just don't like it. I like what the club is doing. I think AJ and the Uso had a great match. I'm getting a little. It's feeling a little stale. The kind of simplicity of the oversimplicity of this narrative of the club bad, everyone else good, you cheer for other guys. I don't know whose voice that is. And then the final thing from SmackDown is SmackDown was just a good night of wrestling. Del Rio and Cesaro had a great match. The counter out of the spinning arm breaker into the neutralizer was fantastic. And then to end the night, Seth Rollins and Sami Zayn put on a great match. Ending made good. You also got a good feeling that Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins could be able to carry a solo match going into Battleground. If that would be the case, who knows? And I guess that flawless segue takes us into our special segment. And this week, the suspensions. First, we have Jerry Lawler, who was suspended for potentially domestic violence. Not great. And then the big news, the big dog, Roman Reigns was suspended for violating the wellness policy. Now, he'll be out for 30 days. He will be back, and his suspension will be up just before Battleground. Now, I don't know if they should go with Roman in the triple threat. It sounds like they are still going to go with Roman Reigns doing the triple threat. But to me, that's kind of a slap in the face to everyone else on your roster. And you're definitely treating Roman like he's a special snowflake. Because he can violate this, serve his time, and then come back and be right in the main event picture. It doesn't seem fair to someone who might be able to be slid into the spot, like a Kevin Owens, or just have it be Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. These guys who aren't getting in trouble. But we'll see what happens. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they comment on Roman being suspended. Hey, he's been pulled from the triple threat because he won't be there for Roman. He also won't be there for the draft. So what are they going to do there if their plan was to have him run one show and Cena be on the other? Do they have Dean Ambrose sitting in that spot? Is it Seth Rollins? Who knows? Then and speaking of the draft, the final bit of business, we got an actual date for the draft. The draft will be happening July 19th on the first live SmackDown. This is a little bit different than how I booked it, but it makes sense. It kind of mucks with the go-home tie-up nature of Battleground, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Very excited to see what happens, and it makes a lot of sense that coming out of Battleground, we'll be going into two different rosters. All in all, it was a pretty good week for WWE, except if you're Roman Reigns. Then it might have been a pretty bad week. You lost your title, and you got suspended. But Dean Ambrose had a really great week this week. And that wraps me up for today. That WWE What Was This Week in WWE.